Imagine standing at the threshold of human awakening, a time when our ancestors first lifted their gaze beyond survival and began to contemplate the stars, the seasons, and perhaps something more. This is not merely a story of evolution, but rather a profound shift in consciousness that forever altered the trajectory of our species. A moment when humans may have first encountered what they would come to call gods. 50,000 years ago, something extraordinary happened to our species. An explosion of symbolic thought, artistic expression, and spiritual awareness that archaeologists struggle to fully explain. The evidence appears suddenly, dramatically, in the archaeological record. Cave paintings depicting half-human, half-animal beings, carefully arranged burial sites with symbolic objects, sculpted figurines showing impossible anatomies. These artifacts emerge with remarkable suddenness across continents. The conventional explanation is that a gradual evolutionary process simply reached a tipping point. But some researchers suggest a more provocative possibility. What if something external catalyzed this transformation? What if our ancestors genuinely encountered something they could only interpret as divine? Tonight we explore this threshold between history and mystery, between evolutionary biology and something perhaps more profound. We'll examine evidence spanning continents and millennia, piecing together the moment when humans first conceptualized the sacred. We'll journey through ancient cave systems in France and Spain, where our ancestors left handprints and painted mysterious figures that still captivate us today. Images created when the last ice age held much of Europe in its grip. We'll examine artifacts from Africa, Australia, and Asia that suggest a shared symbolic language emerged almost simultaneously across disconnected human populations, raising questions about how such parallel development could occur without contact. The archaeological record shows that around 50,000 years ago, human behavior changed dramatically. Tools became more complex, social structures more sophisticated, and most mysteriously, symbolic thinking, the capacity to assign abstract meaning to objects and images, flourished. This documentary will not provide definitive answers. The evidence is too fragmentary, the time too distant. But we will explore compelling theories that might explain how our ancestors first conceived of forces beyond the material world. By the way, I'm curious, have you ever had an experience that felt somehow beyond ordinary reality? The comment section awaits your thoughts on these profound human mysteries. Some researchers propose that climate shifts, increased population density, or neurological evolution explain this great leap forward in human consciousness. These are the explanations embraced by mainstream archaeology and anthropology. But others suggest more provocative possibilities. What if our ancestors encountered something genuinely unexplainable through their primitive understanding of the world? What if they witnessed phenomena that could only be processed through the lens of divinity? The cave paintings at Chauvet, Lascaux, and Altamira don't simply depict animals. They show hybrid creatures, geometric patterns, and handprints that seem to reach across time. Were these mere expressions of imagination or records of actual encounters? We'll examine the shaman theory, the idea that early spiritual leaders accessed altered states of consciousness to commune with what they perceived as spiritual realms. Could these experiences represent genuine contact with something beyond themselves? Archaeological evidence shows that Homo sapiens coexisted with other human species, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and possibly others yet undiscovered. Could encounters with these different humans have inspired the first concepts of beings that were similar yet different? Tonight, we don't simply retell established narratives. Instead, we examine the boundaries between what we know and what remains mysterious about our spiritual awakening. We investigate the moment when humans first conceived of the sacred. The evidence suggests something profound happened to human consciousness during this period. Something that transformed us from clever tool users into beings capable of abstract thought, symbolic representation, and spiritual contemplation. These changes weren't merely functional adaptations for survival. They represent a fundamental shift in how humans perceived reality itself. A new dimension of existence opened to our species, one populated by forces, entities, and meanings beyond the immediately visible. we'll explore controversial theories, from neurological evolution to psychedelic plant encounters to genuine contact with non-human intelligences. Each offers potential insight into how our ancestors first conceived of divinity. This is a journey through time, across disciplines and into the very origins of human spiritual awareness, a careful examination of when, how, and why humans first lifted their gaze to contemplate what might exist beyond the material world. Chapter 2. The Divine Encounter Hypothesis. What would it mean if our earliest spiritual beliefs weren't simply inventions of the human mind, but responses to genuine encounters with something beyond ordinary experience? The implications would fundamentally reshape our understanding of human history. Conventional archaeology treats early religious artifacts as evidence of cognitive evolution, humans becoming smart enough to invent gods. But what if, instead, these artifacts represent attempts to document actual encounters with something extraordinary? The stakes of this inquiry extend beyond academic curiosity. If early humans genuinely encountered something they interpreted as divine, it would suggest our spiritual impulse isn't merely a psychological adaptation or cultural invention. Consider the widespread emergence of remarkably similar religious concepts across isolated human populations. The divine trickster, the wise goddess, the thunderous sky father. These archetypes appear across cultures that had no contact with each other. Carl Jung proposed these represented universal psychological patterns within the human mind. But another explanation might be that diverse human groups encountered similar phenomena, interpreting them through their cultural lens while preserving core similarities. The hypothesis that humans encountered something genuinely other, whether interdimensional beings, advanced civilizations, or natural phenomena beyond their comprehension, would radically alter how we understand religion's origins. It would suggest spirituality isn't just a byproduct of evolving intelligence, but perhaps a response to actual contact with something that exists beyond ordinary human perception, something that left our ancestors forever changed. Archaeological evidence shows that artistic expression, symbolic thinking, and ritual behavior appeared with remarkable suddenness in the human timeline. This creative explosion has puzzled researchers who expect to see gradual evolutionary development. If something catalyzed this transformation, whether contact with other intelligences, neurological changes enabling perception of normally invisible aspects of reality, or some other external factor, it would explain the apparent suddenness of this change. The implications extend to contemporary spiritual experience as well. If early religious concepts originated in genuine encounters rather than imagination, it raises questions about whether similar encounters continue today, interpreted through modern frameworks. Reports of profound spiritual experiences occur across cultures and throughout history. These are typically explained as psychological phenomena, hallucinations, or cultural conditioning. But what if some represent genuine contact with something beyond ordinary reality? The traditional narrative places human consciousness at the center. We invented gods to explain what we couldn't understand. But the alternative hypothesis suggests we may have recognized something that actually exists, however imperfectly we interpreted it. If evidence supported this hypothesis, it would bridge the often contentious divide between scientific materialism and spiritual belief, suggesting both perspectives capture partial truths about human experience and the nature of reality. Throughout this documentary, we'll examine artifacts, cave paintings, ritual sites, and mythological accounts that might suggest genuine encounters rather than mere invention. We'll consider both conventional explanations and more provocative alternatives. I'd love to know, do you think ancient spiritual beliefs were purely human inventions or responses to something our ancestors genuinely encountered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What's most striking in examining early religious artifacts is the element of astonishment they convey. These don't appear to be calm, intellectual attempts to explain natural phenomena. They bear the marks of profound, even overwhelming experiences. The Lion Man of Hohenstein-Stadel, a 40,000-year-old sculpture depicting a human with a lion's head, required over 400 hours to carve from mammoth ivory. This extraordinary investment of time suggests something more significant than idle imagination. The Venus figurines found across Europe, with their exaggerated female forms, have puzzled archaeologists for decades. Were these fertility symbols, pornographic objects, or attempts to represent something actually witnessed? Cave paintings often show animals with remarkable anatomical accuracy alongside strange composite creatures and geometric patterns. The juxtaposition suggests the artists were capable of realistic depiction, but chose to represent something different for certain subjects. If our ancestors encountered beings or phenomena beyond their comprehension, they would have interpreted these through the lens of their experience. Just as indigenous peoples first interpreted European ships and technology through their cultural framework. The hypothesis that humans encountered something genuinely other doesn't require belief in supernatural beings. It could involve contact with advanced civilizations, interdimensional phenomena, or aspects of reality perceivable only in altered states of consciousness. What matters is whether these foundational spiritual concepts originated as responses to actual encounters rather than pure invention. The difference fundamentally changes how we understand the origin and purpose of religious thought. Consider how modern humans might react to encountering a truly advanced technology or non-human intelligence. Many would likely interpret such an encounter through religious or spiritual frameworks, despite our scientific sophistication. Our Paleolithic ancestors, lacking scientific context, would almost certainly interpret any encounter with advanced beings or anomalous phenomena as interactions with divine or supernatural entities. Their cave paintings and figurines might represent attempts to document these experiences. The implications extend to our understanding of consciousness itself. If early humans perceived something beyond ordinary reality, it suggests consciousness might be receptive to dimensions of existence not accessible through our everyday awareness. This documentary explores a profound possibility that the dawn of human spirituality wasn't merely a cognitive development, but a response to something our ancestors actually encountered, something that forever changed how humans perceived reality. Throughout history, humans have reported encounters with beings that seem to exist beyond ordinary reality. Modern interpretations range from psychological projections to hallucinations to extraterrestrial contact. But what if these experiences connect to those of our ancient ancestors? What if the divine encounter hypothesis offers a unifying framework for understanding both ancient religious artifacts and contemporary spiritual experiences? Not as delusions or inventions, but as imperfect human attempts to comprehend genuine contact with something beyond ordinary understanding. The stakes of this inquiry couldn't be higher. It challenges both religious dogmatism and scientific materialism, suggesting a more complex reality where human consciousness encounters phenomena that exist beyond our full comprehension. As we examine the evidence, we'll consider how encounters with the extraordinary might have transformed our ancestors from clever, tool-using primates into beings capable of contemplating the cosmos, their place within it, and forces that might exist beyond the visible world. Chapter 3: The Upper Paleolithic Revolution. To understand the context of humanity's potential first divine encounters, we must journey back to approximately 50,000 years ago, a period archaeologists call the Upper Paleolithic. Earth looked dramatically different than it does today. Vast ice sheets covered much of Europe and North America. Sea levels were significantly lower, creating land bridges between continents. The climate oscillated between extreme cold periods and brief warming intervals. Homo sapiens had evolved in Africa around 300,000 years earlier, but remained relatively limited in their technological and cultural development for hundreds of millennia. Their tools, social structures, and symbolic expressions changed little for most of this time. Other human species populated the Earth alongside our direct ancestors. Neanderthals occupied Europe and Western Asia. The recently discovered Denisovans lived in parts of Asia. Possibly other human species yet unknown to science existed elsewhere. Genetic evidence shows these different human populations occasionally interbred. Modern humans outside Africa carry approximately 1–4% Neanderthal DNA, while some Asian and Pacific Islander populations have Denisovan ancestry. These different human species had coexisted and developed separately for hundreds of thousands of years, each adapted to their environments with distinct physical characteristics, technologies, and possibly cognitive abilities. Then something remarkable happened. Beginning roughly 50,000 years ago, archaeological evidence shows a dramatic acceleration in human cultural and technological development, what scholars call the Upper Paleolithic Revolution or the creative explosion. Suddenly, the archaeological record reveals sophisticated bone tools, musical instruments, elaborate burial practices, long-distance trade networks, and most significantly, unprecedented artistic and symbolic expression. This transformation wasn't gradual as expected in evolutionary processes. It appears with surprising suddenness in the archaeological record, raising questions about what might have catalyzed such dramatic change. The creative explosion coincides with Homo sapiens' migration out of Africa into territories occupied by other human species. Some researchers suggest contact between different human populations might have sparked this cultural acceleration. The timing of this revolution varies slightly across regions. Evidence appears in Africa slightly earlier, around 70,000 years ago. In Europe and Asia, the most dramatic evidence emerges between 40,000 and 50,000 years ago. Before this period, human tools remained relatively unchanged for hundreds of thousands of years. Simple hand axes and scrapers dominated toolkits, with minimal innovation or specialization. After the revolution, we see finely crafted bone needles, specialized hunting implements, fishing tools, and even evidence of complex machinery like spear throwers and possibly bows. Technology became increasingly adapted to specific environments and purposes. The most striking evidence, however, comes from artistic expressions that appeared during this period. Cave paintings depicting animals, human-animal hybrids, geometric patterns, and handprints emerge across continents. The sophistication of these artworks is astounding. The Chauvet cave paintings in France, dated to approximately 30,000 to 32,000 years ago, demonstrate understanding of perspective, shading, and anatomical detail that wouldn't be matched until the Renaissance. Along with cave art, humans began creating portable art objects, carved figurines, engraved bones, and personal ornaments. The famous Venus figurines, with their exaggerated female characteristics, appear across Europe during this period. Burial practices became increasingly elaborate, with grave goods suggesting belief in an afterlife. Bodies were positioned carefully, sometimes sprinkled with red ochre and surrounded by tools, weapons, and decorative items. Evidence of music emerges. Bone flutes carved from vulture and mammoth bones have been discovered in caves in Germany. These sophisticated instruments could play multiple notes and suggest complex understanding of sound. Long-distance trade networks developed, with materials traveling hundreds of kilometers from their sources. Seashells appeared far inland, while specialized stone for tools moved across vast territories, indicating extensive human connections. This period also coincides with humans' expansion into previously uninhabited environments, including Australia around 65,000 years ago, and eventually the Americas. Our species demonstrated unprecedented adaptability to new ecosystems. I'm curious, what aspect of our ancient ancestors' lives do you find most fascinating? Their art, their rituals, or perhaps their survival skills? Share your thoughts below. What makes this revolution so puzzling to archaeologists and anthropologists is its apparent suddenness. Evolutionary processes typically produce gradual changes, but the archaeological evidence suggests a relatively rapid transformation of human behavior and cognition. Several theories attempt to explain this revolution. Some researchers propose a genetic mutation enhanced human cognitive abilities. Others suggest cultural developments reached a critical threshold, enabling more rapid innovation and transmission. Climate change may have played a role, forcing human populations to adapt quickly to changing environments. Increased population density might have accelerated cultural exchange and innovation as humans competed for resources. Another possibility involves neurological changes, allowing humans to access altered states of consciousness more readily. Shamanic practices might have emerged during this period, potentially changing how humans perceived reality. But these conventional explanations struggle to account for the dramatic nature of the change. The shift wasn't merely technological, but represented a fundamental transformation in how humans related to their world. For the first time, we see clear evidence of symbolic thinking, the ability to assign meaning to objects and images beyond their literal properties. This capacity fundamentally distinguishes human cognition and enables religious thought. The revolution coincides with when Homo sapiens began to displace other human species. Within approximately 10,000 years of this creative explosion, Neanderthals disappeared from Europe, with similar fates befalling other human species. What gave Homo sapiens this apparent advantage? Conventional explanations cite superior technology, language, or social organization, but the timing suggests the cognitive and cultural transformation of the Upper Paleolithic Revolution played a crucial role. This context frames our central question. Was this dramatic transformation purely internal to human development, or might it have been catalyzed by contact with something external, something our ancestors could only interpret as divine? To explore this possibility, we must examine what emerged during this revolution. Not just new technologies, but new ways of perceiving and relating to reality itself. New concepts that would fundamentally reshape human existence. Chapter 4. Whispers in Stone and Bone. The evidence for humanity's first potential divine encounters lies preserved in stone, bone, and pigment. Cave paintings, carved figurines, and burial sites offer tantalizing glimpses of how our ancestors suddenly began relating to something beyond the material world. Let's begin with what may be the most compelling evidence: the mysterious cave paintings that emerged during the Upper Paleolithic period. These aren't simple depictions of animals, but complex compositions suggesting sophisticated symbolic thought. In the Chauvet Cave in southern France, discovered in 1994, paintings date back approximately 32,000 years. The technical sophistication is astonishing. Artists used perspective, created movement through multiple image overlays, and employed shading techniques. More intriguing than their technical skill are the subjects they chose to depict. Alongside anatomically accurate animals are therianthropes, beings that combine human and animal features. What inspired these impossible creatures? The Sorcerer of Trois Frères cave in France, dated to around 13,000 years ago, depicts a dancing figure with human legs, but the antlers and body of a deer. Its posture suggests ritual movement, perhaps representing a shaman in trance state. In Spain's El Castillo cave, researchers found something even more puzzling: geometric patterns alongside handprints dated to over 40,000 years ago. These abstract symbols appear with remarkable consistency across different cave sites throughout Europe. Similar geometric patterns, spirals, grids, dots, and zigzag lines, appear in the rock art of indigenous Australians, South African Sand people, and Amazonian tribes. Despite having no contact with each other, these cultures produced remarkably similar abstract symbols. Neuropsychologists suggest these recurring patterns might represent entoptic phenomena, visual effects generated by the human nervous system during altered states of consciousness. But this explanation raises another question: why did humans suddenly begin accessing these states? Alongside cave paintings, figurines carved from ivory, bone, and stone appear in the archaeological record. The famous Lion Man of Hohenstein-Stadel, discovered in Germany, combines a human body with a lion's head. Radiocarbon dating places the Lion Man at approximately 40,000 years old. Experimental archaeology demonstrates it would have taken more than 400 hours to carve using stone tools. Why would hunter-gatherers invest such enormous effort? The Venus figurines found across Europe present another mystery. These female figures with exaggerated breasts, hips, and vulvas were created from mammoth ivory, soft stone, and clay. But their purpose remains hotly debated. Some archaeologists interpret these figurines as fertility symbols or prehistoric pornography. Others suggest they represent actual individuals, perhaps respected elder women or spiritual leaders. The exaggerated features might symbolize their power. Burial practices from this period suggest the emergence of belief in an afterlife. At Sungir in Russia, archaeologists uncovered 2 children buried approximately 24,000 years ago. Their graves contained thousands of ivory beads and elaborate ornaments. The manufacturing time for these grave goods would have required months of dedicated work by skilled craftspeople. Such investment suggests profound beliefs about death and what might lie beyond it. When did humans first conceive of an afterlife? Evidence of ritual spaces emerges during this same period. Deep within caves, far from living areas, archaeologists find footprints of small groups who appear to have gathered for unknown purposes. Some caves show acoustic properties that enhance chanting or drumming. At Les Trois Frères in France, a small chamber dubbed the Sanctuary contains over 280 engraved animals surrounding the central sorcerer figure. The chamber's location, difficult to access and requiring crawling through narrow passages, suggests deliberate seclusion. These ritual spaces often contain no evidence of everyday activities like cooking or tool-making. They appear dedicated solely to activities we might classify as religious or spiritual. What occurred in these secluded chambers? Perhaps most intriguing is the timing of this symbolic explosion. It coincides with periods of dramatic climate change and when Homo sapiens encountered other human species like Neanderthals and Denisovans. Recent DNA analysis shows that interbreeding between these human species occurred during this same time period. Could contact between different types of humans have inspired the first concepts of beings that were similar to, yet different from, ourselves? The archaeological evidence presents a compelling mystery. After hundreds of thousands of years of limited symbolic expression, humans suddenly began creating sophisticated art, developing complex religious concepts, and investing enormous resources in ritual activities. What catalyzed this transformation? Was it purely internal, a cognitive leap within human evolution? Or might our ancestors have encountered something external that forever changed how they perceived reality? The most provocative hypothesis suggests that early humans had genuine encounters with phenomena they could only interpret as divine or supernatural. Their art and rituals weren't merely imaginative expressions, but attempts to record and relate to these encounters. This hypothesis doesn't require belief in supernatural beings, as understood by modern religions. The divine encounters might have involved natural phenomena, astronomical events, experiences in altered states of consciousness, or even contact with advanced beings. What matters is whether these foundational spiritual concepts originated as responses to actual encounters rather than pure imagination. The difference fundamentally changes how we understand the origin and purpose of religious thought. Consider how isolated indigenous tribes have reacted upon first contact with technological societies. Many interpreted helicopters, radios, and other technologies through spiritual frameworks as gods or ancestral beings because they lacked scientific context. Our Paleolithic ancestors, confronted with phenomena beyond their comprehension, would similarly interpret these experiences through the conceptual frameworks available to them. The results are preserved in their art and ritual spaces. The therianthropes, half-human, half-animal beings, appear with remarkable consistency across continents. They feature prominently in cave art from Europe, rock paintings from Africa, and later religious iconography worldwide. These composite beings challenge conventional archaeological interpretation. Were they purely imaginative creations? Representations of humans wearing animal costumes for rituals, or attempts to depict entities actually encountered in some form? The geometric patterns found alongside figurative art present another mystery. These abstract designs, spirals, grids, nested curves, and parallel lines, appear with striking similarity across cultures, separated by vast distances and time periods. When modern humans report divine or supernatural encounters today, they often describe geometric visual phenomena preceding or accompanying the experience. Could our ancestors have been documenting similar perceptual events? The sudden emergence of this symbolic revolution coincides with the spread of Homo sapiens across the globe. As our species expanded into new territories, they carried these new religious concepts and artistic traditions with them. As we conclude this first exploration of humanity's potential divine encounters, we're left with a profound question. If these artistic and ritual traditions don't merely represent imagination, but attempts to document actual experiences, what exactly did our ancestors encounter? In the next section, we'll examine the neurological evidence for altered states of consciousness in prehistoric shamanism. We'll explore how the human brain might perceive dimensions of reality beyond ordinary awareness. We'll also investigate the striking similarities between ancient religious iconography and contemporary accounts of supernatural encounters. Could the same phenomena that inspired the first religious concepts still be occurring today? The answers may reshape our understanding of human consciousness, religious experience, and our place in the cosmos. They challenge us to consider whether the boundaries between the material and spiritual worlds might be more permeable than modern science has assumed. What if our ancestors weren't simply inventing gods to explain what they couldn't understand? What if they were documenting encounters with something genuinely beyond ordinary human experience, something that forever altered the course of human development? Chapter 5. The Anomalies of Ancient Awakening. As we delve deeper into humanity's spiritual awakening, we encounter contradictions that challenge conventional archaeological narratives. These anomalies don't fit neatly into established timelines of human development, suggesting our understanding remains incomplete. Consider the case of Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. This monumental complex of stone circles and T-shaped pillars, some standing 18 feet tall and weighing up to 16 tons, was constructed approximately 12,000 years ago. What makes Göbekli Tepe extraordinary isn't just its age, but that it was built by hunter-gatherers, not settled agriculturalists. The conventional narrative holds that monumental architecture emerged only after agricultural settlements provided surplus resources and organized labor. Yet Göbekli Tepe predates agriculture by thousands of years. Its builders were nomadic hunter-gatherers who somehow coordinated massive construction projects requiring hundreds of workers and sophisticated architectural knowledge. The site's intricate carvings depict animals, abstract symbols, and human-like figures in ways reminiscent of much later civilizations. How did hunter-gatherers develop such artistic sophistication and architectural knowledge without the infrastructure of settled communities? Even more puzzling, after using the site for approximately 1,500 years, its builders deliberately buried the entire complex under thousands of tons of earth. Why construct such an extraordinary monument only to intentionally conceal it? Some researchers propose Göbekli Tepe served as a ritual center where dispersed hunter-gatherer bands gathered periodically. But this explanation doesn't resolve how pre-agricultural societies coordinated such massive construction projects. Similar anomalies appear worldwide. On remote Easter Island in the Pacific, enormous stone moai statues averaging 13 feet tall and weighing 14 tons stand in silent witness to a sophisticated society that somehow transported these massive monoliths across the island. In Peru, the precision-cut stones of Sacsayhuaman fit together without mortar so tightly that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. Some blocks weigh over 100 tons, yet show evidence of complex cutting and fitting techniques. These archaeological anomalies suggest that ancient humans possessed technological and organizational capabilities beyond what conventional timelines allow. Either our understanding of technological development is flawed, or these societies received knowledge from elsewhere. The Upper Paleolithic cave paintings present their own contradictions. The technical sophistication of works at Chauvet Cave, 32,000 years old, equals or exceeds those of Lascaux, 17,000 years old, contradicting expectations of gradual artistic development. If artistic technique developed progressively, we would expect earlier paintings to be simpler and less sophisticated. Instead, the earliest known cave art already demonstrates mastery of perspective, shading, and anatomical detail. Even more puzzling is the consistency of certain symbols across vast distances. The wounded man motif, human figures pierced by spears or arrows, appears in rock art from Europe, Africa, and Australia, despite these populations having no contact. Entoptic phenomena, geometric patterns generated by the human nervous system during altered states, might explain some similarities. But this raises another question. Why did humans across continents suddenly begin accessing and recording these altered states? The traditional anthropological explanation suggests shamanic practices developed independently as an adaptive response to environmental challenges. Yet the remarkable similarities in both practice and associated symbolism suggest something more universal was occurring. Another contradiction emerges in the timing of symbolic thinking. While the creative explosion appears dramatically in the archaeological record around 50,000 years ago, evidence suggests humans had the cognitive capacity for symbolic thought much earlier. Anatomically, modern humans evolved approximately 300,000 years ago, with brains physically identical to our own. Why the 250,000-year gap between anatomical modernity and the flourishing of symbolic expression and spiritual concepts? Some evidence suggests earlier symbolic behavior. Ochre processing for pigment at Blombos Cave in South Africa dates to 100,000 years ago. Engraved patterns on ochre and shell beads from the same site indicate symbolic thinking predating the creative explosion. This contradicts the narrative of sudden spiritual awakening around 50,000 years ago. Either symbolic thinking developed gradually over a much longer period, or something specific catalyzed its dramatic acceleration and global spread at this particular moment. The distribution pattern of early religious artifacts presents another anomaly. Similar symbolic expressions appear almost simultaneously across widely separated geographical regions, despite limited mobility and communication technologies. If you've been contemplating these ancient mysteries with us so far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think happened to spark humanity's spiritual awakening? Share your theories in the comments below. Consider the Venus figurines, female statuettes with exaggerated sexual characteristics, found across Europe and Siberia, dating to 38,000 to 14,000 years ago. Despite being created by separate cultures across vast distances, they share remarkable stylistic similarities. The consistency of these figurines suggests either cultural transmission across enormous distances or independent creation driven by some common experience or perception. Neither explanation fully satisfies archaeological expectations. Similar contradictions appear in the emergence of agriculture. Conventional timelines place the agricultural revolution around 12,000 years ago, with independent origins in the Middle East, China, Mesoamerica, the Andes, and possibly other regions. Yet these agricultural packages, domesticated crops and animals, appear with remarkable suddenness in the archaeological record. The transition from wild grains to domesticated varieties shows fewer intermediate stages than evolutionary models would predict. Agricultural knowledge, including complex irrigation systems, crop rotation, and selective breeding, emerged with surprising sophistication. These technologies require generations of careful observation and experimentation. The traditional explanation involves gradual independent discovery across separate regions, but the relatively simultaneous appearance of similar agricultural packages worldwide raises questions about whether some knowledge transfer might have occurred. Geological evidence presents another category of anomalies. Many ancient sites show weathering patterns consistent with exposure to rainfall far more intense than their current desert environments receive. The Sphinx in Egypt exhibits weathering patterns that geologists like Robert Schoch argue could only have been caused by prolonged heavy rainfall. Yet the region has been arid for the past 5,000 years, suggesting the monument might be thousands of years older than conventionally dated. Similar weathering anomalies appear at sites worldwide, suggesting either that our climate history models are incomplete or that some monuments are significantly older than archaeological dating suggests. The distribution of megalithic sites presents geographical anomalies as well. Many are aligned with astronomical phenomena, solstices, equinoxes, and specific star positions, requiring sophisticated observational astronomy. How did widely separated cultures develop similar astronomical knowledge and incorporate it into monumental architecture? The conventional explanation cites independent discovery, yet the precision and similarity of these alignments suggest something more. Genetic evidence adds another layer of contradiction. Studies of human DNA show unexplained acceleration periods, where mutations accumulated more rapidly than expected, particularly in genes related to brain development. One such acceleration occurred approximately 50,000 years ago, precisely when the creative explosion appears in the archaeological record. What caused this genetic acceleration? Natural selection alone seems insufficient to explain its timing and specificity. These contradictions and anomalies don't prove external intervention in human development, but they do suggest our understanding of how spiritual consciousness emerged remains incomplete. The conventional narrative of gradual, independent development struggles to explain the suddenness, sophistication, and similarities of spiritual expression worldwide. Alternative explanations, including the divine encounter hypothesis, deserve serious consideration. What if these anomalies point towards something more profound than methodological gaps in archaeology? What if they represent evidence of experiences that transformed human consciousness in ways that left physical traces in our art, architecture, and ritual spaces? In the next section, we'll examine how ancient myths and legends might preserve memories of these transformative encounters. Stories passed down through generations that might contain kernels of historical truth about humanity's first contact with the divine. Chapter 6: Echoes Across Time. Myths as memory. Ancient myths have traditionally been dismissed by academics as primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena or reinforce social structures. Yet these narratives show remarkable cross-cultural similarities that challenge purely functional interpretations. Could some myths preserve distant memories of actual events, experiences so profound they were transmitted across generations through stories? In this chapter, we'll explore how ancient myths might contain echoes of humanity's first divine encounters. Nearly every culture worldwide shares myths of divine beings who brought knowledge to humanity. The Mesopotamian Oannes, Egyptian Thoth, Greek Prometheus, Mesoamerican Quetzalcoatl, and countless others share a common narrative structure. These culture-bearer deities typically arrive from elsewhere, the sky, the sea, or distant lands. They teach humans essential skills like agriculture, writing, mathematics, and architecture. Then they depart, promising to return someday. The conventional interpretation views these as symbolic narratives explaining the origins of cultural knowledge. But their remarkable similarities across isolated cultures raise questions about whether they might preserve memories of actual encounters. Plato's account of Atlantis provides another intriguing example. He describes an advanced civilization destroyed by catastrophe, with survivors dispersing worldwide, bringing knowledge to less developed cultures. Long dismissed as pure invention, elements of Plato's account align with geological evidence of rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age. Around 12,000 years ago, melting ice sheets caused global sea levels to rise dramatically, inundating coastal civilizations. Could myths of golden ages, advanced prehistoric civilizations, and worldwide floods preserve memories of actual events? Geological evidence confirms that the end of the last ice age brought catastrophic flooding to many regions. The Aboriginal Australian concept of dreamtime, or the dreaming, describes an ancient time when ancestral beings shaped the landscape and established human culture. These stories contain detailed geographical knowledge verified by modern archaeology. Aboriginal rock art in Australia's Kimberley region depicts what anthropologists call wangina, enigmatic white figures with large eyes and no mouths. These paintings are periodically refreshed, continuing a tradition that may extend back 50,000 years. Native Australian stories describe the wangina as sky beings who brought knowledge and established laws. The antiquity of these traditions, potentially stretching back to humanity's earliest religious expressions, makes them particularly significant. Similar traditions appear in sand rock art from southern Africa, where therianthropic figures resembling those in European cave paintings are identified by modern sand people as depicting shamanic experiences of transformation. These traditions suggest continuity between prehistoric art and historical mythological systems. The same motifs, therianthropes, geometric patterns, and divine instructors appear consistently across vast stretches of time and space. Perhaps most intriguing are myths describing the first emergence of spiritual awareness. Many traditions worldwide describe a moment when humans gained knowledge that separated them from animals, often through interaction with divine or extraordinary beings. The biblical narrative of Eden describes humans acquiring knowledge of good and evil through interaction with a serpent. This parallels Mesopotamian myths, where serpent deities bring forbidden knowledge to humanity. Greek tradition holds that Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give to humans. Fire here represents not just literal flame, but consciousness itself, the divine spark that distinguished humans from animals. Out-of-place artifacts present physical anomalies that complement these mythic patterns. Objects discovered in archaeological contexts that seem technologically advanced for their time period challenge conventional developmental timelines. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a 1st century BCE shipwreck, contains gears of complexity not seen again until the 14th century. This astronomical computer could predict planetary positions with remarkable accuracy. The Baghdad battery, a ceramic vessel containing a copper cylinder and iron rod, dates to the Parthian period, 250 BCE, 224 CE. When filled with an acidic liquid, it produces electric current, though its purpose remains debated. Beyond these famous examples, numerous artifacts discovered worldwide exhibit technological characteristics seemingly beyond their culture's known capabilities. These don't necessarily indicate divine intervention, but do suggest our technological timelines remain incomplete. What's your favorite ancient myth or legend that might contain historical truth? I'd be curious to hear which stories you find most compelling. Share your thoughts in the comments. Perhaps the most compelling, out-of-place evidence comes not from artifacts, but knowledge systems. Ancient astronomical knowledge often displays precision difficult to reconcile with available observational tools. The Dogon people of Mali possessed detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, including its companion, white dwarf Sirius B, invisible to the naked eye and only photographed in 1970. They described its 50-year orbital period and other characteristics with remarkable accuracy. While anthropologists debate whether this knowledge might have come from contact with modern astronomers, the Dogon maintain that this information was passed down from ancient times. Similar astronomical anomalies appear in other ancient knowledge systems. Babylonian clay tablets record mathematical knowledge, including aspects of geometry and algebra, far more advanced than their technological development would suggest. Some tablets show awareness of Pythagorean principles 1,000 years before Pythagoras. Ancient Indian texts describe atomic theory, multiple dimensions, and cosmological concepts with surprising parallels to modern physics. The Nasadiya Sukta of the Rig Veda contemplates the origin of existence in ways resembling contemporary cosmological questions. These knowledge anomalies don't necessarily indicate external intervention in human development, but they do suggest that ancient peoples possessed observational capabilities and theoretical frameworks more sophisticated than conventionally acknowledged. Perhaps most relevant to our investigation are ancient accounts describing altered states of consciousness and techniques for inducing them. These practices appear with remarkable consistency across separate cultures. From Australian Aboriginal songlines to Amazonian ayahuasca traditions to Siberian shamanic practices, cultures worldwide developed methods for accessing what they perceived as spiritual realms or alternate dimensions of reality. These traditions share common elements: rhythmic sound, sensory deprivation or overstimulation, and often plant substances that affect neurochemistry. The experiences reported show consistent patterns, geometric visuals, animal transformations, and contact with non-human entities. Modern neuroscience offers potential explanations for these experiences through altered brain function, but this doesn't address why humans worldwide felt compelled to seek these states or attributed such significance to the entities encountered within them. Archaeological evidence suggests these practices extend deep into prehistory. Residue analysis has identified psychoactive compounds in ancient ritual vessels. Cave art displays patterns consistent with neurologically generated hallucinations. The universal nature of these practices raises profound questions. Did our ancestors develop methods for perceiving aspects of reality normally filtered by everyday consciousness? Were the entities they encountered merely internal projections or something more? Ancient myths and religious traditions insist these experiences provided genuine contact with non-ordinary realities. Modern materialist perspectives dismiss this possibility, attributing all such experiences to internal neurological processes. Yet the consistency of these experiences across cultures, their profound impact on human development, and their persistence throughout history suggests something more significant than mere hallucination. These practices fundamentally shaped human culture and consciousness. The divine encounter hypothesis proposes that these experiences, whether induced through plants, meditation, sensory manipulation, or spontaneous event, represented genuine contact with something beyond ordinary human perception. This doesn't require supernatural explanation. The divine might represent aspects of reality accessible only through altered perception, advanced beings misinterpreted through pre-scientific frameworks, or dimensions of existence science hasn't yet recognized. What matters is that these encounters, preserved in myth, art, and ritual, may have catalyzed humanity's spiritual awakening. They may represent not mere invention, but attempts to document and understand genuine experiences that transformed human consciousness. As we've explored the mythic evidence and out-of-place anomalies, patterns emerge, suggesting our ancestors encountered something that profoundly altered their perception of reality. Something that inspired the first religious concepts and symbolic expressions. In our next chapter, we'll examine what's truly at stake in this investigation. If humanity's spiritual awakening was catalyzed by genuine encounters rather than mere imagination, what implications does this hold for our understanding of consciousness and reality itself? Chapter 7. Beyond History, the Existential Implications. The question of whether humans genuinely encountered something divine isn't merely historical curiosity. It strikes at the heart of how we understand consciousness, reality, and our place within it. The stakes extend far beyond academic debate. If early religious concepts originated in actual encounters rather than imagination, it would fundamentally transform our understanding of human nature. Spirituality would represent not cultural invention, but response to perceived contact with something beyond ordinary reality. This possibility challenges both religious dogmatism and scientific materialism. Religious traditions might preserve memories of genuine encounters, yet have misinterpreted them through cultural frameworks. Science might have prematurely dismissed experiences outside its explanatory models. Throughout this documentary, we've examined archaeological evidence suggesting something profound happened to human consciousness approximately 50,000 years ago. A transformation preserved in art, ritual sites, and myths worldwide. We've explored how this transformation appears with surprising suddenness in the archaeological record. How similar spiritual concepts emerged almost simultaneously across separate continents. How these developments coincided with genetic changes affecting brain function. The conventional explanation attributes these changes to internal cognitive evolution, the human brain reaching a developmental threshold that suddenly enabled symbolic thought. But this explanation struggles to account for the dramatic nature and global synchronicity of the change. The divine encounter hypothesis offers an alternative possibility, that external contact catalyzed this transformation, that our ancestors experienced something so profound it forever altered how humans perceived reality. This hypothesis doesn't require belief in supernatural beings as understood by organized religions. The divine encounters might have involved phenomena with entirely natural explanations, albeit beyond the scientific understanding of both our ancestors and ourselves. Consider three possible scenarios that might explain humanity's spiritual awakening, each with profound implications for how we understand ourselves and our place in the cosmos. First, the neurological awakening hypothesis. Perhaps changes in the human brain, whether through genetic mutation, environmental factors, or cultural practices, suddenly enabled perception of aspects of reality previously filtered from awareness. Neuroscience recognizes that our brains construct reality rather than perceiving it directly. Our senses detect only narrow bands of available information, while neural processing filters this limited input to construct workable models of reality. What if genetic changes around 50,000 years ago altered these perceptual filters? Perhaps humans suddenly gained awareness of dimensions or aspects of reality that had always existed but remained imperceptible to earlier hominids. The spiritual traditions that subsequently developed worldwide might represent attempts to understand and relate to these newly perceived aspects of reality. The diversity of religious concepts might reflect different cultural interpretations of similar perceptual experiences. This scenario suggests spirituality isn't delusion, but engagement with aspects of reality beyond ordinary perception. The implications would transform both religious and scientific understanding of human consciousness. A second possibility, the extraterrestrial contact hypothesis, proposes that early humans encountered advanced beings, whether from elsewhere on Earth or beyond. These encounters catalyzed spiritual concepts and technological development. This controversial hypothesis doesn't require ancient astronaut scenarios popular in sensationalist media. Even brief contact between anatomically modern humans and a more advanced civilization could have profoundly impacted human development. Indigenous peoples' first encounters with technologically advanced Europeans were interpreted through religious frameworks. Cargo cults developed in Melanesia when isolated populations encountered modern technology during World War II. Our Paleolithic ancestors, lacking scientific context, would similarly interpret any contact with advanced beings through supernatural frameworks. These interpretations, transmitted through generations, might form the basis of early religious traditions. If this hypothesis contains truth, it would fundamentally recontextualize human history and our place in the cosmos. Religious traditions might preserve distorted memories of actual contact with non-human intelligences. For those tuning in from around the world, do you think ancient religious experiences were purely psychological, or could they represent contact with something real beyond human perception? I'm curious to hear your perspective. A third possibility, the consciousness field hypothesis, suggests reality itself contains dimensions of meaning and purpose accessible through altered awareness. Perhaps consciousness isn't merely an emergent property of physical brains, but fundamental to reality itself. This perspective aligns with both ancient wisdom traditions and certain interpretations of quantum physics. It suggests the universe isn't merely physical, but includes dimensions of consciousness that humans access through spiritual practices. If consciousness exists as a field that our brains access rather than generate, it would explain the remarkable similarities in mystical experiences across cultures and times. These experiences might represent contact with aspects of reality beyond the material. This perspective would bridge the seemingly irreconcilable divide between scientific materialism and spiritual traditions. Both would represent valid approaches to understanding different aspects of a multidimensional reality. The implications extend to contemporary experiences as well. Reports of spiritual encounters, near-death experiences, and mystical states might represent access to the same dimensions of reality that catalyzed humanity's first religious concepts. Regardless of which hypothesis proves most accurate, what's clear is that something profound happened to human consciousness during the Upper Paleolithic period, something that transformed our species' relationship to reality itself. This transformation wasn't merely intellectual. It fundamentally altered how humans perceived themselves and their place in the cosmos. It introduced concepts of meaning, purpose, and transcendence that shaped all subsequent human development. The stakes of this inquiry extend to how we understand consciousness itself. Is awareness merely a biochemical process contained within individual brains, or does it connect to dimensions of reality beyond the material? If human spirituality originated in genuine encounters rather than imagination, it suggests consciousness might transcend its apparent physical limitations, that humans might perceive aspects of reality beyond the immediately visible. This possibility has profound implications for contemporary issues, from artificial intelligence to environmental ethics to understanding consciousness disorders. Our model of awareness fundamentally shapes how we approach these challenges. The archaeological evidence we've examined suggests something catalyzed human symbolic thought and spiritual awareness with remarkable suddenness. The mythological evidence preserves memories of transformative encounters across cultures. Together, these lines of evidence support the possibility that humanity's spiritual awakening wasn't merely internal development, but response to something encountered. Something that forever altered how humans perceived and related to reality. This doesn't mean all religious concepts accurately represent what our ancestors encountered. Cultural frameworks inevitably shaped how these experiences were interpreted and transmitted. Dogmatic religious claims remain subject to critical evaluation. But it does suggest the spiritual impulse itself, the sense that reality contains dimensions beyond the material, might originate in genuine perception rather than mere imagination or delusion. That science and spirituality might represent complementary approaches to understanding reality. As we approach the climax of our investigation, we confront the most profound implications of the divine encounter hypothesis. If early humans genuinely encountered something beyond ordinary reality, might similar encounters still occur today? Countless people across cultures report spiritual experiences they consider genuine contact with something beyond themselves. Modern frameworks typically interpret these as internal psychological phenomena, projections, hallucinations, or cultural conditioning. But what if some of these experiences represent the same perceptual capacity that catalyzed humanity's first religious concepts? What if humans retain the ability to perceive aspects of reality beyond the material? The therapeutic potential of spiritual practices increasingly receives scientific recognition. Meditation, prayer, and even carefully guided psychedelic experiences show measurable benefits for psychological well-being, addiction recovery, and existential distress. These benefits prove difficult to explain through purely materialist frameworks. Why would practices focused on connecting with supposed non-physical realities produce measurable physical benefits in the brain and body? Perhaps these practices temporarily alter perceptual filters, allowing awareness of dimensions of reality normally excluded from consciousness. The therapeutic benefits might come not from delusion, but expanded perception. If humanity's spiritual awakening originated in genuine encounters with something beyond ordinary perception, it suggests modern humans might still access these dimensions of reality. That spiritual experiences might represent not regression to primitive thinking, but expansion of awareness. This possibility challenges us to reconsider how we understand the relationship between science and spirituality, not as competing explanatory systems, but as complementary approaches to understanding different aspects of a multidimensional reality. The divine encounter hypothesis doesn't provide definitive answers. The evidence remains too fragmentary, the time too distant, but it opens possibilities typically excluded from academic consideration. As we prepare to examine the final evidence in our investigation, we confront a profound possibility that humanity's spiritual awakening wasn't delusion or cultural invention, that it represented genuine contact with something beyond ordinary human perception, something that transformed our ancestors from clever tool users into beings capable of contemplating meaning, purpose, and transcendence, something that initiated the symbolic revolution preserved in cave art, figurines, and ritual sites worldwide, something that might still be accessible to human consciousness today through the spiritual practices developed by traditions worldwide, something that might expand our understanding of reality beyond the limitations of both dogmatic religion and reductive materialism. In our final section, we'll examine contemporary evidence suggesting these encounters continue today. We'll explore how modern neuroscience, quantum physics, and consciousness research might provide new frameworks for understanding humanity's first divine encounters. We'll consider whether the boundaries between science and spirituality might be more permeable than commonly assumed. Whether the awakening of human spiritual consciousness 50,000 years ago might offer insights relevant to the challenges facing humanity today. Chapter 8. 3 Pathways to Awakening. As we approach the climax of our investigation, we must consider the most plausible explanations for humanity's spiritual awakening. 3 compelling theories emerge, each with supporting evidence and significant implications for how we understand human consciousness. The first, the evolutionary cognitive development theory, represents the mainstream scientific consensus. It proposes that changes in brain function, whether through genetic mutation or cultural accumulation, reached a threshold enabling symbolic thought. This theory points to evidence of gradual development preceding the creative explosion. Simple ochre processing at Blombos Cave, 100,000 years ago, and early symbolic objects suggest cognitive capacities developed incrementally rather than suddenly. Proponents argue that neurological changes, particularly in the prefrontal cortex and language processing regions, gradually enhanced working memory, abstract thinking, and symbolic representation. These capacities eventually reached a threshold enabling spiritual concepts. The theory's strength lies in its alignment with evolutionary principles. Complex abilities typically develop through incremental adaptations rather than sudden leaps. The archaeological record shows some evidence of this gradual development. However, this explanation struggles to account for the apparent suddenness and global synchronicity of symbolic expression. If cognitive capacities developed gradually, why did symbolic behavior appear so dramatically in the archaeological record? The second theory, the shamanic altered states hypothesis, suggests that humans discovered techniques for accessing altered states of consciousness, whether through psychoactive plants, sensory manipulation, or spontaneous experience. This theory points to neurological research showing that altered states produce consistent experiences across cultures. Geometric patterns, entity encounters, and transformative revelations appear regardless of cultural context. Evidence supporting this hypothesis includes residue analysis identifying psychoactive compounds in ancient ritual vessels, cave paintings showing patterns consistent with hallucinatory states, and the universal emergence of shamanic practices across separated cultures. South African researcher David Lewis Williams has demonstrated compelling similarities between San shamanic experiences and Upper Paleolithic cave art. The therianthropic figures, geometric patterns, and handprints may represent attempts to document altered state experiences. This theory explains both the suddenness and cross-cultural similarities in spiritual concepts. Once humans discovered techniques for altering consciousness, the similar neurological experiences would produce similar symbolic expressions worldwide. However, it doesn't fully explain why humans suddenly began seeking these states around 50,000 years ago. If the neurological capacity existed in anatomically modern humans for hundreds of thousands of years, what triggered this behavioral change? I'm genuinely curious. Do you tend to find scientific or mystical explanations more compelling for humanity's spiritual awakening? Drop a comment below with your perspective. The third theory, the external catalyst hypothesis, proposes that some external event or encounter triggered humanity's spiritual awakening. This might involve astronomical phenomena, environmental changes, or even contact with non-human intelligence. Evidence supporting this hypothesis includes the global synchronicity of symbolic expression, the appearance of similar motifs across separated cultures, and the preservation of contact narratives in worldwide mythological systems. Astronomical research has identified potential celestial events coinciding with this period, including a supernova visible to humans approximately 60,000 years ago. Such phenomena might have triggered profound psychological and cultural responses. Geological evidence shows this period experienced dramatic climate fluctuations during the last ice age. These environmental pressures might have catalyzed new cognitive strategies, including spiritual frameworks for understanding unpredictable natural forces. More controversially, some researchers propose that contact with advanced non-human intelligence might have catalyzed human spiritual awakening. Whether interpreted as extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or unknown terrestrial civilizations. While lacking direct physical evidence, this hypothesis would explain both the suddenness of the symbolic explosion and the consistent divine teacher narratives preserved in mythological systems worldwide. Each of these theories contains elements that align with available evidence. Each also contains speculative aspects that extend beyond what archaeology can currently verify. The truth may involve elements from multiple hypotheses. The evolutionary cognitive development theory aligns with established scientific frameworks, but struggles to explain the apparent suddenness of symbolic explosion. It provides a how without fully addressing the why of spiritual awakening. The shamanic altered states hypothesis explains both the how and many of the specific symbols and practices that emerged. But it doesn't adequately explain why humans suddenly began exploring altered consciousness at this particular moment in history. The external catalyst hypothesis potentially explains the timing, synchronicity, and cross-cultural similarities, but it introduces elements that extend beyond conventional archaeological evidence, requiring a more expansive view of what might be possible. These competing theories aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Perhaps cognitive evolution reached a threshold enabling humans to perceive or interpret previously unnoticed phenomena. Perhaps environmental pressures motivated exploration of altered consciousness. Perhaps external phenomena, whether celestial events, environmental changes, or something more extraordinary, catalyzed both neurological development and cultural practices that permanently altered human consciousness. The significance of this question extends beyond academic curiosity. How we understand the origins of spiritual awareness fundamentally shapes how we interpret consciousness itself, whether as merely biochemical or potentially connected to something beyond individual brains. If spiritual awareness emerged purely through internal neurological development, it suggests consciousness remains confined within individual brains. Spiritual experiences would represent internal projections rather than perception of anything external. If shamanic practices enabled perception of normally filtered aspects of reality, it suggests consciousness might access dimensions beyond ordinary awareness. Spiritual traditions might preserve techniques for perceiving aspects of reality normally excluded from consciousness. If external catalysts triggered human spiritual awareness, it suggests reality might contain elements beyond our ordinary perception, elements that our ancestors encountered and interpreted through available cultural frameworks. As we approach our conclusion, we must acknowledge the limitations of archaeological evidence. The fragmentary nature of prehistoric remains means we may never know with certainty what catalyzed humanity's spiritual awakening. Yet the evidence consistently points towards something profound happening to human consciousness during the Upper Paleolithic period, something that transformed how our ancestors perceived themselves and their place in the cosmos. Something that initiated the creation of art, ritual, and mythological systems that have shaped human culture ever since. Something that introduced concepts of meaning, purpose, and transcendence that remain fundamental to human experience. In our next chapter, we'll explore how contemporary scientific research, from neuroscience to quantum physics to consciousness studies, might provide new frameworks for understanding this ancient transformation. Frameworks that bridge the seeming divide between science and spirituality. We'll examine evidence suggesting similar divine encounters continue today, and consider whether modern humans might access the same dimensions of awareness that catalyzed our ancestors' spiritual awakening 50,000 years ago. Chapter 9. The New Science of Ancient Mystery. Recent scientific discoveries offer fresh perspectives on humanity's spiritual awakening. Advances in neuroscience, genetics, and consciousness research provide frameworks that might bridge the divide between scientific materialism and ancient wisdom traditions. Neuroscientific research increasingly recognizes that altered states of consciousness, whether induced through meditation, breathwork, or psychedelic compounds, produce measurable changes in brain function. Changes that participants often describe as spiritually significant. Studies using functional MRI and EEG show that these altered states reduce activity in the brain's default mode network, regions associated with self-referential thinking and the sense of separate self. This neural quieting correlates with experiences of unity and transcendence. What's striking is that these experiences, whether induced through meditation in Buddhist monks, psychedelics in controlled studies, or spontaneous mystical experiences, show remarkable similarities across cultural and historical contexts. Participants consistently report dissolution of self-boundaries, interconnectedness with all things, encounters with seemingly autonomous entities, and access to knowledge they describe as transcending ordinary understanding. Experiences strikingly similar to those depicted in ancient art and myth. These findings suggest our ancestors' spiritual experiences might have neurological correlates, but this doesn't necessarily mean they were just hallucinations. Neuroscience describes the how without addressing the what of consciousness. As neuroscientist Anil Seth notes, the fact that these experiences correlate with brain activity doesn't tell us whether they're just happening in the brain or whether the brain is revealing something that exists beyond itself. This perspective aligns with what philosopher William James called transmissive theory, the idea that brains might function as receivers or filters of consciousness rather than generators. Altered states might reduce filtering, allowing awareness of normally excluded aspects of reality. Genetic research adds another dimension. Studies of ancient DNA show our ancestors experienced genetic changes affecting brain function during the same period when symbolic expression emerged in the archaeological record. The FOXP2 gene, associated with language processing and symbolic thought, shows evidence of recent evolutionary selection. Other genes affecting brain development, neurochemistry, and sensory processing also show evidence of accelerated evolution during this period. While correlation doesn't prove causation, the timing suggests genetic changes might have enabled new forms of consciousness, perhaps altering perceptual filters or enhancing capacities for symbolic representation. Environmental genomics reveals something even more intriguing: evidence of viral DNA incorporated into the human genome during this same period. Some researchers propose these viral introductions might have affected brain function. This raises a fascinating possibility. What if changes in human consciousness were catalyzed by external agents at the microbiological level? Viral DNA introductions potentially altering brain function and perceptual capacities. Quantum physics introduces further paradoxes relevant to our investigation. The observer effect, quantum entanglement, and non-locality challenge conventional notions of reality as existing independent of consciousness. Pioneering physicists like John Wheeler proposed that consciousness might be fundamental rather than emergent, that awareness might be intrinsic to reality rather than merely a byproduct of complex brains. This perspective aligns with ancient wisdom traditions worldwide. If consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, it suggests awareness might exist beyond individual brains, that humans might potentially access dimensions of consciousness transcending individual identity, dimensions our ancestors might have encountered during their spiritual awakening. I wonder about your thoughts on consciousness. Do you think it's generated solely by our brains, or could it be something more fundamental to reality itself? Your perspective matters to this ongoing exploration. Archaeological technologies provide new insights as well. Advanced dating methods, isotope analysis, and ancient DNA extraction offer increasingly precise understanding of prehistoric human development. These methods reveal something surprising. Human symbolic behavior appears to have emerged in multiple regions almost simultaneously. Even accounting for dating imprecision, the global synchronicity suggests something beyond gradual, independent development. Recent excavations at Blombos Cave in South Africa, Border Cave in South Africa, and Ksar Akil in Lebanon push evidence for symbolic behavior earlier than previously recognized. Yet the dramatic acceleration around 50,000 years ago remains apparent. What's emerging is a more complex picture, one where humans possessed some capacity for symbolic thought earlier than previously recognized, yet experienced dramatic acceleration at particular moments. Moments potentially triggered by external catalysts. Perhaps most fascinating are discoveries suggesting sophisticated astronomical knowledge in prehistoric cultures. Göbekli Tepe's structures align with celestial events. Cave paintings record astronomical phenomena with surprising precision. These alignments suggest early humans possessed observational capabilities and conceptual frameworks more sophisticated than previously recognized. They weren't merely responding to immediate survival concerns, but contemplating their place within cosmic patterns. Contemporary religious experiences present another paradox. Despite modernization and scientific advancement, humans worldwide continue to report encounters they interpret as spiritual or divine. Experiences remarkably similar to those depicted in ancient art. Near-death experiences, mystical states, and entity encounters during altered consciousness show consistent patterns across cultures. These experiences often transform participants' understanding of reality regardless of prior belief systems. Scientific studies of these experiences reveal measurable effects: reduced fear of death, increased psychological well-being, and shifts in values toward compassion and interconnectedness. Effects difficult to explain through purely materialist frameworks. If these contemporary experiences represent the same perceptual capacities that catalyzed humanity's first spiritual concepts, it suggests something profound about consciousness itself. That awareness might access dimensions beyond ordinary perception. The most significant paradox emerges from consciousness research itself. Despite remarkable advances in understanding brain function, the hard problem of consciousness, how physical processes generate subjective experience, remains unresolved. Philosopher David Chalmers articulates this paradox. Even if we explained all the functional, dynamical, and structural properties of the brain, we would still be left with the question, why is all this processing accompanied by conscious experience? This paradox suggests our understanding of consciousness remains fundamentally incomplete. That reality might contain dimensions beyond the material that science has yet to fully comprehend. Dimensions our ancestors might have encountered during their spiritual awakening. Emerging theories like integrated information theory propose consciousness might be intrinsic to reality, present in varying degrees throughout the universe rather than exclusive to brains. This aligns with panpsychist perspectives found in many ancient wisdom traditions. If consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, it would explain how separated human populations developed similar spiritual concepts. They weren't merely projecting similar imaginations, but perceiving aspects of the same underlying reality. The convergence of these scientific developments suggests we might be approaching a paradigm shift in understanding consciousness, one that could bridge the seeming divide between scientific materialism and spiritual traditions. Perhaps our ancestors' divine encounters weren't delusions or cultural inventions, but perceptions of aspects of reality normally filtered from awareness. Perhaps the spiritual awakening that transformed humanity 50,000 years ago reflected genuine contact with dimensions beyond ordinary perception. In our final chapter, we'll integrate these scientific insights with the archaeological and mythological evidence. We'll consider what might have actually happened when humans first conceived of the divine, and what implications this holds for understanding consciousness today. Chapter 10. When Humans Met the Gods. We've journeyed through archaeological evidence, mythological patterns, and scientific research seeking to understand humanity's first divine encounters. Now we approach our central question. What actually happened when humans first conceived of the divine? The evidence consistently points towards something profound occurring to human consciousness during the Upper Paleolithic period, a transformation preserved in cave paintings, figurines, burial practices, and mythological systems worldwide. This transformation appears with remarkable suddenness in the archaeological record. Similar symbolic expressions emerge almost simultaneously across separated continents. These patterns suggest something beyond gradual, independent development. Integrating the archaeological, mythological, and scientific evidence, a compelling possibility emerges. Around 50,000 years ago, humans experienced a fundamental shift in consciousness that altered how they perceived reality itself. This shift wasn't merely cognitive development, but expansion of awareness. Humans began perceiving dimensions of reality previously filtered from consciousness, whether through genetic changes, environmental pressures, altered states, or some combination of these factors. The consistency of symbolic expressions worldwide suggests these weren't merely cultural inventions, but responses to similar perceptual experiences. Our ancestors weren't simply imagining the divine, but attempting to document encounters with something beyond ordinary awareness. The therianthropic figures in cave paintings, beings combining human and animal features, likely represent attempts to depict transformative experiences. Modern shamanic traditions describe similar transformations during altered consciousness. The geometric patterns appearing alongside figurative art worldwide likely represent entoptic phenomena, visual effects generated by the human nervous system during altered states. Their consistency across cultures suggests shared neurological experiences rather than arbitrary invention. The wounded man motifs, handprints, and abstract symbols found in cave art worldwide might represent attempts to document specific altered state experiences. Similar patterns appear in the visionary art of contemporary shamanic cultures. The gods our ancestors encountered weren't necessarily supernatural beings as understood by later religions. They might represent aspects of consciousness or dimensions of reality normally filtered from awareness. Perceptions that transcended ordinary understanding. What's most significant isn't whether these experiences represented contact with external entities or internal psychological processes. What matters is that they fundamentally transformed how humans perceived themselves and their place within reality. Before this awakening, humans operated primarily within immediate sensory experience. After it, they began perceiving patterns, meanings, and connections extending beyond the visible. They developed awareness of dimensions transcending the material. This awakening wasn't delusion but expansion. Our ancestors began perceiving aspects of reality normally filtered from awareness, whether cosmic patterns, subtle energies, or dimensions of consciousness beyond individual identity. The gods they encountered might represent consciousness itself, awareness beyond individual identity that pervades all existence. This would explain why similar divine concepts emerged worldwide despite cultural separation. For many of you watching, this perspective might align with personal experiences, moments of transcendence, unity, or contact with something beyond ordinary understanding. Modern humans continue to report experiences remarkably similar to those depicted in ancient art. Scientific research increasingly validates aspects of these experiences. Studies of meditation, psychedelics, and spontaneous mystical states reveal measurable effects on brain function and lasting psychological transformation, effects difficult to dismiss as mere delusion. This convergence of ancient wisdom and contemporary science suggests a profound possibility. Humanity's spiritual awakening 50,000 years ago might represent not cultural invention, but genuine expansion of awareness. Perception of dimensions of reality normally excluded from consciousness. This perspective doesn't require belief in supernatural beings. The divine might simply represent aspects of reality beyond ordinary perception. Whether fields of consciousness, subtle energies, or dimensions science hasn't yet recognized. What's most remarkable is that these perceptual capacities appear to remain accessible to contemporary humans. The same altered states that catalyzed our ancestors' spiritual awakening continue to produce transformative experiences across cultures. This suggests the divine encounter hypothesis has profound implications beyond historical understanding. It suggests humans possess capacities for perception and awareness extending beyond ordinary consciousness. capacities that shaped our earliest spiritual concepts. If this hypothesis contains truth, it bridges the seeming divide between scientific materialism and spiritual traditions. Both would represent valid approaches to understanding different aspects of a multi-dimensional reality. Science would remain essential for understanding the material world and the neurological correlates of consciousness. Spiritual traditions would preserve techniques for accessing dimensions of awareness beyond the ordinary. Both would contribute to a more complete understanding of reality. The divine encounter hypothesis doesn't provide definitive answers. The evidence remains too fragmentary, the time too distant. But it offers a framework that integrates archaeological, mythological, and scientific evidence more completely than conventional explanations. It suggests humanity's spiritual awakening wasn't delusion or cultural invention, but response to genuine encounters with dimensions of reality beyond ordinary perception. Encounters that fundamentally transformed how humans understood themselves and their place within the cosmos. This perspective invites us to reconsider contemporary spiritual experiences, not as regression to primitive thinking, but as access to perceptual capacities that shaped human consciousness from its earliest awakening. Capacities that remain available to modern awareness. Perhaps most significantly, it suggests consciousness itself might be more expansive than conventional science has recognized. That awareness might access dimensions beyond the material, dimensions our ancestors encountered and interpreted through cultural frameworks. The divine encounters that catalyzed humanity's spiritual awakening 50,000 years ago might continue today. Through meditation, contemplative practice, altered states, or spontaneous experience. The capacity to perceive beyond ordinary awareness remains part of human potential. This doesn't mean all religious claims deserve uncritical acceptance. Cultural frameworks inevitably shape how these experiences are interpreted and transmitted. Critical thinking remains essential for evaluating specific beliefs and practices, but it does suggest the spiritual impulse itself, the sense that reality contains dimensions beyond the material, might originate in genuine perception rather than mere delusion or cultural invention. That humans might indeed perceive beyond ordinary awareness. This perspective offers something precious in our divided world, potential reconciliation between scientific and spiritual understanding, not through compromising intellectual integrity, but by expanding our conception of what consciousness might perceive. The divine encounter hypothesis suggests our ancestors weren't merely inventing gods to explain what they couldn't understand. They were attempting to document and relate to dimensions of reality beyond ordinary awareness, dimensions that transformed human consciousness forever. As our investigation concludes, we return to where we began, the mysterious cave paintings, enigmatic figurines, and sacred sites that preserve humanity's first spiritual expressions. These artifacts represent not just our past, but potentially our future. The divine encounters that catalyzed humanity's spiritual awakening 50,000 years ago didn't end with our ancestors. They continue today, interpreted through contemporary frameworks, yet recognizably similar in their essential qualities. What changed wasn't the phenomena themselves, but how humans interpreted them. Our ancestors attributed their experiences to gods, spirits, or ancestral beings. Modern humans might describe the same experiences through psychological, neurological, or quantum frameworks. Yet beneath these interpretive differences lie experiences remarkably consistent across time and culture. Dissolution of self-boundaries, interconnectedness with all existence, access to knowledge beyond ordinary understanding, and encounters with what feels like profound meaning. The awakening of human spiritual consciousness 50,000 years ago represents not just historical development, but ongoing potential. The capacity to perceive beyond ordinary awareness remains available to contemporary humans. Perhaps the most valuable insight from our investigation isn't historical but existential. The recognition that consciousness might be more expansive than our ordinary awareness suggests, that humans might perceive dimensions of reality normally filtered from awareness. As we contemplate the cave paintings of our ancestors, we might recognize not primitive superstition, but attempts to document the same expansive awareness that humans continue to experience today. A consciousness that transcends individual identity and connects to something greater. If you've enjoyed this exploration of humanity's first divine encounters, I invite you to join us for future journeys into the mysteries that connect our past and present. Subscribe to continue exploring how ancient wisdom and modern science illuminate the nature of human consciousness.